It's a Northwest Lifestyle Weekend on KOMO News. IRG's Health Talk continues.
Our first guest is Dr. Julia Becke, a primary care physician from Pacific Medical Center. And at this time of the year and all summer long and into the fall, we're talking about bug bites today. Bug bites, Shannon, you remember when we were kids over at Eastern Washington, we got bit a lot, didn't we?
Got bit a lot. Mosquitoes. But we used to go out on the playground and catch bees. That was crazy. You'd grab their stingers when they're on the dandelion. Fun stuff. We're going to learn about bug bites, though.
All right, here we go with Dr. Becke and Shannon O'Kelly.
Dr. Becke, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on again. We're going to talk about bug bites, which is always an interesting topic for a lot of people because everybody gets bit once or twice in their lifetime or more if you're outside a lot. Hey, but before we get into that topic, tell me about your practice and your area of interest and your specialty. You're a primary care physician.
That's correct.
And so tell us about your practice.
I'm a primary care internist, and I work up on First Hill for Pacific Medical Centers. I practice a variety of general preventative care as well as managing complex medical illness.
Tell our listeners maybe what's the difference between internal medicine and primary care or family medicine, a primary care internist versus a primary care physician?
Yeah. Internal medicine, we take care of people who are adults. So I see people 17 and over. I don't take care of kids, and I don't take care of pregnant women and deliveries.
So you get the later adolescents to the geriatric patients.
You got it. I can see people from 17 to 101 is my oldest patient right now.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that's great. How'd you get interested in this? Did you have an experience growing up or just in college, like biology and science? I mean, what was your interest level?
Yeah, so I started becoming interested in medicine when I was a late teenager, decided that I wanted to take care of people, and it was sort of a vague idea. In college, it became more solidified into medicine, realizing that I was good at science and understanding that I could incorporate that with my interest in helping people into a profession.
I thought maybe you had a bug bite and then all of a sudden realized you wanted to go into medicine, but that's what we're talking about is bug bites.
It was actually an interest in tropical medicine that was one of my initial draws into internal medicine. So
that's good to know because traveling in the tropics, there's a lot of bugs out there. But let's talk about bug bites as an internal medicine physician. Maybe patients show up. Tell us about bug bites, different kind of bites, signs and symptoms. I mean, if you want to talk about any specific bites that are prevalent in the Northwest that you might see in patients, that would be great. We can even talk with and start with the mosquito. Let's talk about the mosquito to start with.
Pesky mosquito. Thankfully, in Seattle area, we don't have a great deal of mosquitoes, and the smoke that we're experiencing right now seems to be keeping them down a little bit. But once you get out of the Seattle area, we do have quite a few mosquitoes. The mosquito is actually a bite as opposed to your wasps and bees, which are stings. And the reason why we get so irritated with mosquito bites is that they release an enzyme under our skin that creates an irritation as they're drinking our blood. And then our body creates an inflammatory response, releases particular enzymes and inflammatory chemicals that create that red welt that's so irritating and itchy.
Right. Do we have to be concerned about anything in the Northwest besides the irritation on the skin and maybe uncomfortable with the mosquito bite? Because, we hear about Zika, we hear about malaria. I mean, mosquitoes are a real carrier for a lot of different diseases, particularly down in South America.
Absolutely. They are a vector for disease, and including our own southern United States. So, we did have a case of Zika virus that was transmitted by a mosquito in Florida. But thankfully, the United States overall has been buffered so far against Zika itself in the continental United States. I think the other virus of concern is the West Nile virus. Again, we haven't had, as far as I'm aware, any locally transmitted West Nile virus. It seems to be transmitted east of the mountains, primarily in the southern United States when it's happening.
However, if you're traveling to the tropics and the areas are infested with mosquitoes or have more opportunity for mosquito bites, what do you recommend patients do?
It's really important to be aware of your surroundings. Mosquitoes really like areas where there's standing water. So if you're going to be in a beautiful location in Florida, of course, where they have lots of water wherever you might be going, you want to make sure that you're using a good mosquito repellent, especially around sunset when mosquitoes like to come out. For adults, I generally recommend using something containing DEET, D-E-E-T.
And you're in adult medicine. Do you have any tips for like pediatric patients, young kids? DEET works the same on them as adult?
As far as I understand, the CDC does say that DEET is okay for young children, but certainly check with your pediatrician because it depends on their age.
More with Shannon O'Kelly and Dr. Julia Becke after this time out on KOMO.
It's a Northwest Lifestyle Weekend on KOMO News. Now back to IRG's Health Talk.
More about bug bites with Shannon O'Kelly and Dr. Julia Becke.
Well, Dr. Beck, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for discussing bug bites, and particularly mosquitoes. But I think recently I read the Northwest, we're pretty protected here, but I thought I read something where we've had an increase in ticks in the Northwest. I know on the East Coast, Lyme's disease is huge. I mean, I think if you go out in the outdoors in Connecticut or go hiking in the Northeast, you got to have protection from ticks. But tell us about tick bites.
Yeah, so, ticks certainly like to hide in underbrush. They like to be in protected spaces. And so the time that you're going to be thinking about ticks is when you're out in the tall grass in areas where they can find a place to hide. Humans are one of their favorite meals, but not their only favorite meal. Certainly they like deer, they like mice. And that's where the transmission of viruses or infections like Lyme disease are happening is with ticks that feed on both humans and other animals.
Do we have any Lyme disease in the Northwest? Do you ever see that in your practice at all?
I do not see Lyme disease in Seattle. So, so far, again, similar to the West Nile, it doesn't seem like it has crossed over the mountains. But we can see Lyme disease on the other side of the mountains, and then certainly in many other areas of the country. So if you're traveling in the Midwest on the East Coast, the most important thing is if you're going to be out being active, hiking, make sure that you're covering up. I'm motioning with my arm down to my ankle, covering up with high socks, tucking pants into socks if you can, and then checking your co-hikers. Go ahead and do a quick tick check when you leave the trail to make sure that you don't have any little black dots clinging to your skin.
Yeah, I saw a program on TV, and like you go hiking in Connecticut, in some spots in Connecticut, and you walk out of the brush and you have ticks on you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a natural process.
Absolutely.
So, big
Absolutely.
issue.
They're looking for a meal.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about bee stings, because I mean, we've had this controversy in the news a little while ago with epinephrine and the pins and how expensive they are. But if you've never seen someone go into anaphylactic shock, I have, and I'm sure you have too. It's scary.
Frightening.
It is really scary, and it's
Absolutely.
scary for the patient. So tell us about bee stings.
Sure, absolutely. Thankfully, anaphylaxis to bee stings is, while it's common, it's not, thankfully not everybody's going to have that response to a bee sting. Bee stings hurt, obviously, because the bee is injecting a venom under our skin, and it can create a very painful, localized reaction with redness and swelling, and you touch it and it feels hot and warm. Some people just have a very, simple response to a bee sting. They get a red, inflamed area, lasts for a couple days, and then it goes away. Some people can have a large localized response where they can create a fairly up to 10 centimeter in circumference area around a sting, and that can be painful, of course, and uncomfortable. And then lastly, some people will have an anaphylactic reaction, a systemic reaction, where they develop respiratory symptoms. They might sound like they're having trouble speaking. You might hear a wheezy sound coming from their chest. Sometimes the face and lips will get puffy. And those certainly are emergent situations.
And if you don't have an epinephrine pin, I should say, what should you do if you're near someone that's maybe in anaphylactic shock? I mean, maybe real quick, just 911?
Call 911.
Call 911. Yeah, that's always a good choice. There you go. Everything you need to know about bug bites, particularly in the Northwest. Dr. Beck, thank you for your time. Great information. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too.
All right, that was Dr. Julia Becke, primary care physician from Pacific Medical Center. PacificMedicalCenters.org with more info. We've been talking about bug bites, and Shannon, sometimes they're just nuisances. Sometimes they can be pretty serious.
They can be serious, particularly we just talked about anaphylactic shock with bee stings. You got to be prepared for that if you're allergic to bee stings.
All right, Carrie McCaffrey is going to join us next as we continue after this time out on KOMO.